Hello and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Lyndon. Now, if I get this right in this video, this could be groundbreaking. If you've ever struggled with solo skills and how to solo over anything, then this video is for you. I'm going to be doing it on the tenor sax, but it's for alto players as well, and I'm going to put everything that I'm going to be playing in the titles at the bottom of the screen for both instruments. And it's just weird how life plays out. So I was running a workshop and I got people to solo over Watermelon Man, and then we kind of discussed what their strategies were, and most people didn't really have a strategy. Then I gave them a few strategies and it was like groundbreaking. Everybody finished that workshop with this massive grin on their face saying, I can't wait to go home and practice. And that's what I'm going to share with you. Then the very next day I got this email which I want to share with you, and I'm going to read it to you. This is from a gentleman called John, and he says, I bet you can't solve this one. Well, with all due respect, John, this is what I do for a living. I heard a recording of me at our local blues jam which confirmed something I'd feared for a long time. Left to burble away behind singers and other instruments, I sound okay, but when thrown a solo, I go limp home mode like a car with a dodgy engine. I play dirge-like drear with no sense of rhythm, total rabbit in the car headlights. Now, if I just stop there for a second, that's really interesting phrase, rabbit in the car headlights. Why would he use that phrase? That describes to me fear. And what would anybody be scared of? Well, the unknown and the unprepared. That's what's causing that syndrome, total rabbit in the car headlights. Bear in mind, I practice for hours every day and have been playing now for 6 years. If you want to make a good solo, how long you've been playing and how much you practice every day has got little or nothing to do with it, unless it's like your second day. But if you've been playing for a few months, then you can put together a really good solo, but you need to have some strategies and follow some rules. And this, my friends, takes discipline, because as we're going to see, it's not intuitive to solo. You have to learn what works, and that's the key here. I look good with the sax though, and going forward may simply mime or ask the singers not to offer me a solo. Any thoughts from you? I can't imagine what answers you might have, so this time I think I will win my bet that you can't help. Lots of people think that soloing is some sort of magic, or it's something which is out of your grasp, and it isn't. So what I've done is I've created a PDF which you can download for absolutely free with all of my thoughts written down. And the way that I got it across at this workshop to people was to make a couple of analogies. Now, you're going to have to put up with me talking a bit, but if we get these concepts, then this is going to change everything for you. My approach is anybody can learn to improve his or her solo skills. If you feel like a rabbit caught in the headlights, it's probably due to fear, and that fear often stems from feeling unprepared. So that is what's causing the rabbit in the headlights. He just doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. He hasn't got a plan. But here's the good news. Hours of daily practice and years of playing aren't the only things that matter. What really counts is how you apply what you know. It's all, my friends, in the application. Even someone who's been playing for a short time can craft a great solo if they understand the strategy and have the discipline to stick to it. And you have to make yourself do it. Let's use some analogies. So if we think about poetry, if you ask me to write a poem, I would think a poem has to have certain factors. It must have something about love, because that's what people write poems about, right? It should probably reference the smell of lavender, because we need some sensory input. It needs probably good to have a thou or a thee in there. I love thee so much. Should include the reflection of moonlight in her hair. Words should rhyme. These are my personal knee-jerk reactions, knowing nothing about how poetry is really properly structured. I would cobble these elements together and hope for magic, but the results would probably be awful, and that's not what professional poets do. I want to analyse a fantastic poem that used to be on the tube by a lady called Wendy Cope, and she says, I am a poet, I am very fond of bananas. I am bananas, I am very fond of a poet. I am a poet of bananas, I am very fond. A fond poet of I am very bananas. And so the poem goes on. And what I'm analysing from this is that what she does is to take something very ordinary and mundane, no lavender, no moonlight, no medieval language, just a day-to-day experience, and transform it into something magical, funny, or moving. So when we're soloing, it's not about throwing in complexity, speed, or a jumble of ideas. Instead, you should focus on crafting something coherent and meaningful. And so the first point is keep it simple. It's not about complexity. The second point, if you get this in your mind, is conversations as an analogy for soloing. And imagine that your solo is a conversation, and a conversation might go, somebody says to me, "This is my favourite orange jumper," and I say, "I've got no orange in my wardrobe at all," and she says, "Well, you should consider getting some," and I say, "You're right, and by the way, it really suits you." An idea has been formed, and then she's given it to me, and I've developed it, and I've given it back to her, and she's responded to what I've said and given it back to me. This is how a good conversation goes, and that's how a good solo goes as well. Instead of, she says, "This is my favourite orange jumper," and I say to her, "I'd like to go to Istanbul." And she goes, "What?" And I say, "Cats are really lovely, don't you think? Messy, but lovely." So there's nothing wrong with mentioning in Istanbul or cats. They're good topics of conversation, but it's out of place and it's got nothing to do with the original statement. And yet we solo like that all the time. You hear it in people's solo. They make a statement and the next statement they make has no obvious connection to the first statement. And they're just trying to get complexity. They're just trying to get lavender and wind in the hair and the moonlight on the, they're trying to do something and it's not there. So a formula for solos, which I personally stick to, and I share this with people that I teach and it works, is, first rule is keep it simple. Just think about bananas. Then secondly, repetition. If you make a statement, you need to repeat it and develop it and repeat it again and develop it again and keep doing that. It's a really strong way of soloing. Number three is to leave some space. The fourth thing that you could think about is linguistic rhythm. So think about rhythmic phrases. So I like chicken and my wife likes cheese. I can use that on my saxophone, but da 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 da. And most importantly, tell a story. So how can we apply those rules? So if we take a super simple scale-based phrase, stick with it, repeat it, explore it, remember it. That's the most important thing. Remember what you said, so that you can come back to it later. The space is crucial, but it's not intuitive. What's intuitive is to fill all of the canvas up with paint. You need to leave some space. The pauses are often more powerful than the words. So when you've developed and exhausted one idea, move on to another simple phrase, repeat it, develop it, and bring in space. Then return to your first idea and tie the story together. So this requires preparation, understanding the strategy, and the discipline to resist the urge to waffle or jump from one idea to another. Now, the funny thing is that ironically, it's actually easier to solo like this because you're only working with one or two or three ideas and you've got plenty of space. You've got the space to think and your mind is not, you're not caught in the headlights anymore. You know what you're going to do. You are prepared for it. And you have the time to think and fewer ideas to manage and greater clarity. So practical exercises, let's play something. So choose a backing track and pick something simple like I've said a major scale or a minor scale or a tune like Watermelon Man or Cantaloupe Island, and pick a key that you feel really comfortable in. If your brain is struggling with the notes of a scale, it's not going to work as well as if you are completely and totally confident with the notes of the scale. So if I just pick a really familiar key like C major for tenor sax, which is G major for alto sax, I put on a backing track, I'm going to start with the sweet spots. So the chord tones, the root, the third, the fifth, the seventh and the ninth are your sweet spots. For interest, start on the third, seventh or ninth rather than the root. And what this does is it creates immediate tension and that sounds really nice. You've got to be hitting chord tones. Then number 4 says develop a phrase. So if I begin with a simple sequence like E, F, G, E. So this, look. So that is my fundamental idea, and listen to how nice that sounds when I put on a backing track. that sounds really lovely already, and now I'm just going to keep that as my core idea, but I'm going to very gently explore either side of that just by going to the next note along, or maybe developing the rhythmic aspect of it, thinking rhythmically. So I'm just going to develop that idea a little bit now. Have a listen. So even though I'm playing some other notes now, the core idea is still E, F, G, E. Exactly the same idea, but I'm just moving slightly, and I encourage you to spend quite a lot of time doing that. Now, I could execute exactly the same idea, but instead of starting on the 3rd, which is the E, I could start on the 7th, which is the B, and that would sound lovely, and I could develop that idea. Have a listen. Now, if I develop that idea, go to the first idea, and it starts to sound really, really nice, and I'm just playing with the scale. That's all I'm doing. This kind of practice is groundbreaking. It can be if you practice soloing like this, but it does take discipline, because your mind is going, do another phrase and another phrase and another phrase and make it more complex. Don't do that. Practice like this and your solos will start to improve. Number 5 says, after thoroughly exploring the scale tone, shift to chord tones. For example, play around with the 9th, 7th and 5th. So in the key of C, that would be D, B and G. I'm just going to descend down those. Have a listen. And I'm going to repeat that idea. And listen to how lovely that sounds if I just do that on its own with the backing track. If I develop that idea just a little bit, it starts to sound really, really nice. You can't go wrong. If you're hitting the chord tones, you cannot go wrong. Think about the rhythm of the language. Make your musical phrases have the same rhythmic feel that a short phrase or sentence might sound like. I really love how this sounds. So that would work with the E, F, G, the 3, 4, 5 idea. I really love how this sounds. So I'm putting the emphasis on love and sounds. So then if I put those ideas together, those 3 core ideas, listen now to my beautiful solo, how lovely it sounds, and it's virtually effortless. Have a listen. It's not the most complex solo in the world, but that's not what it's about. It sounds lovely. If I played that at a wedding function or at a jam session, or if I played that in a band, that would work really well. And even though we're playing slowly, and I'm using an app, by the way, called Session Band Jazz Volume 2, absolutely fantastic. I strongly recommend it. Even though I'm using a slow Latin vibe on this, which is very kind of chilled, these ideas are not genre specific. They will work in any genre. If I put something funky on and I just made it a little bit more dynamic, then that would work with funk or swing. It will work everywhere. And then what you can do to practice this more is you can do this in lots of different keys. If you're okay in doing it in C major, explore doing it in lots of other keys. And if you've already got your scales down, then this is a really good way of practicing your scales in a very kind of practical way. And I really strongly recommend that you do this, because I know for sure that it works. If you're comfortable doing this in major scales, you can take exactly the same principles, because that's what I'm really trying to share with you, on minor scales. You could do it on Dorian minors, you could do it on harmonic minors, you could do it on dominant seventh scales like Mixolydian scales. You could do it over any type of scale, because the principles are always going to work. Keeping it simple, using the scale tones, using the chord tones, repeating and developing ideas. And then the last thing that I'd say is that what we all want is we want to go from 1 to 100 in a simple step, and it's just going to take some time to develop, and I guess that's okay. I'd like to take a shortcut, but there really isn't one. You just have to put the work in. And what you're looking for with your solos, if you get a 5 or 10% improvement in what you're doing every month, then in a year you will be, way beyond your current capacity for soloing. It's all about having a plan and having a strategy, right? Please let me know if that's been useful for you. I would so much appreciate your feedback, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in the next video. If you want to buy me a coffee, you can. I'd love you to go visit my website, which is saxmadesimple.com. There's tons of free content on there, and there's also tons of really good tutorials now that you can purchase, and I would love for you to support my channel by buying one of my courses, and if you just want to help yourself to the free stuff, that's fine as well. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.